Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Church Chats, where we discuss church, faith, life, and friends with our friends. And today we are here with the wonderful, legendary Mr. Mark Burrows. Thank you, Mark, for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Well, I get to do this.
Well, all the time when we've done these church chats, this is season 2. We're starting with Mr. Mark here. I kind of like to start with where we first met and where we first started out. I first came here when I was in high school, and that's when I first met you. I was in 2003, and I knew you as the youth choir director. I had started the youth praise band over in the Justin, and so I always remembered on Sundays you would have youth choir practice and rehearsal, and then we'd have youth band practice too. And so I was always going, okay, we got Mr. Mark, we got to make sure that, well, I guess you weren't Mr. Mark at that point.
Yet.
You were just Mark Burrows there.
I was just Mark.
I think a lot of people might not know that I don't want to say a lot of people, but people who know you strictly as Mr. Mark might only think of you in that way, as the children's minister, and not necessarily the choir director, the youth choir director, just the musical side of Mr. Mark. So I guess what's it been like, all these different roles that you've had at this church? But when you first got here, was this your first job?
Yeah. So I went to SMU for undergrad, music education, and so my first job out of undergrad. So a lot of us that do music, we have to do more than one thing to make it work. And so during the week, I was an elementary music teacher in DISD in Dallas, and then my weekend work, I was a choir director for a small church, Lutheran church in Irving. I did that for about 2 years before I came here in 1995.
Okay, 95 is when you started here?
Yes. And
what was your first role here?
So it was a youth choir.
Okay.
How I got here was through my work in the school district over in Dallas. I was working on a project, a big concert that was going to happen at the Meyerson with kids from all over the district. And the main man in charge of that was a man named Doug Pummel. And he and I became friends, and I'd come over to Fort Worth and visit with him. I was, of course, living in Dallas. And almost all the way through my second year with the church work I was doing in Irving, it just wasn't a good fit. And so I said, hey, Doug, if you ever hear of anything over in Fort Worth, let me know. I'd be open to that. I was young, I was 23 at the time. And he said, well, there's an opening for the youth choir director position at First United Methodist Church in Fort Worth. And he knew that because his wife, Janet, was the organist here. She served as the organist for 8 years. Her daughter, Julie, who is Julie Dean, Miss Julie, I've known them for, almost 30 years now. And he put my name in the hat, and then folks followed up, and I drove from Dallas to here for the interview, and I had to drive in a loaner car because my car had been destroyed in that storm, and it was the famous Mayfest storm of '95.
Oh yeah, with all that hail.
All the hail. There's a ton of hail over here in Dallas. There was a ton of rain, and my car got totaled. I mean, neighbors across the street say that water was like going through my car, through the dash. And so here I am in my little loaner car, and I'm driving up to what to me looks like Notre Dame. And I'm like, man, they're going to see right through me. There's no way they're going to hire me to be the youth choir director. And but one thing led to another. The interview went well. And so they brought me. They had a council, like a search committee, and
they had to grill you.
They had to grill me, and they did. And it was great. Things were going well, and then Tom Cockrell, who's a dear friend, my dentist and my kid's dentist, and just all around great guy, longtime member. He was on that because I had all 3 of his kids going through, and he said, "So tell me what your experience is with youth choir, with teenagers." And of course, I didn't have much of a resume, so I'm trying to pad it as best I can. I'm like, well, I've worked as an adult choir director for 2 years in Irving. He's like, yeah, and I've just done all this work with elementary school choirs in Dallas. He goes, so you have no experience. And I'm like, no, I don't. And I thought, man, I don't know if I like him. That was tough, but they offered it to me, and he just ended up being a great friend and went on so many tours. I mean, he was a choir tour coordinator. All 3 of his kids went all the way through, and just but yeah, that's how I got started here.
That's awesome. Well, and I mean, honestly, if you're just honest about the resume, maybe that's what got you the job. Just
I guess.
Saying, actually, no, I have 0 experience.
I should have cut to that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of choir tour, so recently you took a little bit of a break, obviously, you've had lots of different roles, and we'll get into all those eventually here.
All the roles.
But we're going to stick with youth choir for now. You recently just took back over youth choir 2 years ago?
It's been 2 years.
So you've had 2 tours, and you just got back from this second one. Can you talk about that tour?
Oh, man. Yes, it was great. So we took 32 youth and 11 brave chaperones, and we did a tour that went to our furthest away point was Pensacola, Florida. And the reason we chose that is through the years when I was the youth choir director, we had a tradition that on the last day of tour, as we were coming back, we would vote on where we would go the next year. And that would be up to the youth. And that's led to some really interesting destinations that I wouldn't necessarily choose. One year we went to Minneapolis. I'm like, really? You want to go to Minnesota? Okay. And it was a great tour. They chose it. So I believe in them having a vote and them having a say and having just empowerment. And so after last year's tour, we had 3 options on the table, and they chose the beach option with a day in New Orleans. And so the way our tours, the way they used to work, and this is the way every choir tour from church choirs to college choirs, what it used to be back in the day, whatever the day means, was that you'd get on a bus, you'd go to a church, you'd get there in the evening, you'd have a potluck meal that the church would prepare. Then you would do a concert or a musical, and then after that, the church had arranged for host families. These are members of that church, and these 4 youth would go stay with this family, and these 4 youth would go stay with that family, and these 2, and those 6. And then the next morning, the family would feed them breakfast, and they would all come get back on the bus and go do it again.
This is all ministry safe back then.
Oh
right?
my gosh! Can you imagine us doing that today? I mean, like, bye. We've never met the people you're driving off with right now. We hope they're okay.
The 90s, wasn't it great?
And that's what everybody did.
Yeah.
And there's no way in the world we would ever do that now. And so anyway, what our tours are now, so that changed some things. But change is good, and it can be really, and it can lead to some really positive things happening. So instead of being the 20th church choir that has gone through this church and done a concert, blah, 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 we're like, okay, well, we have to do our singing during the day. Well, who's going to be able to come hear us during the day? Well, children at a children's home, residents at a memory care facility or in a retirement community, they're at home and they need people to come in and bring music and just good vibes in a way that they might not get. And so we totally changed the model to where what we would do is we would just sleep on gym floors or whoever would put us up. Hopefully they had showers. It's teenagers, so hopefully they had showers. And then we'd spend the night, and then we'd get up and we'd go sing for an assisted living community. And we don't just sing a concert where we sing a few pieces at them and then wave goodbye. We would sing maybe a 20, 30-minute concert. Then we would sing some songs with the residents, songs that might be from their youth. Older hymns, What a Wonderful World, we would sing, and we would all hold hands and sing it together. And then our youth would just stay and visit for a while and not just get up and go, but ask the older adults questions. And I really think that there's a unique bond that our young people and our older adults have, because they're both can be kind of marginalized. Because, with a conversation starter so often with kids, it's, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not who are you right now, right? Well, when you become a person, instead of seeing the person who's there right now, And we do the same thing with our older adults. Well, what did you used to do? When you were useful, and it's like, but
Oof.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so our youth and our older adults really have a bond. They have something that, and it's magic when you see them together. And this last trip and that's what we do now, and it's the way we do our tours, and it's extraordinary. Because after we sing, we go do sightseeing. We go to the beach. We go to the French Quarter. And we have to drag the kids back on the bus.
Right.
We have a schedule to keep, and they want to just keep visiting because they've found some older adult who is just unbelievably charming and has stories to tell. And so that's wonderful. And so that's what we do. We'll do that, and we'll go sightsee. And typically we find a place where we can sing in worship on a Sunday morning, so our kids can get a different perspective on what a worshiping community looks like, how the flow is, and so that was great. We sang at First United Methodist Church in Pensacola, and the congregations there just adored our kids, and they were the service choir for the whole morning. And then we do things that you might not get to do otherwise. And one of those things we got to do was we went from right around Jackson, Mississippi to Montgomery, Alabama. And when you drive that route, on the way, you're going to stop in Selma, Alabama. And the first time I took a group through and realized that we were going to stop in Selma, like, y'all, we have to stop. We have to stop and get out.
Yeah.
This is a major city. It's a small city, but it's a major part of the civil rights movement. And so this year we did that again, and we got the bus let us out. And there's the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which is one of the most famous sites in the entire civil rights movements, where the Bloody Sunday events occurred, where they were walking across this bridge, and they were on their way to Montgomery from Selma to walk it. And the bridge is so pitched that you can't really see what's on the other side until you get to the top. And so those marchers got to the top and realized that there were people waiting on the other side on horseback, with dogs, with clubs. And so it's chilling. And so like we need to walk across this bridge and take all the pictures you want, but once we start walking, I want you to put your phones away, let's really experience this. And so then we walk across, and we got to the other side, and there was a street preacher and he was telling the whole story that we'd talked about it. And then there is a little monument park there, and on a placard, one of the things it says is, "When we pray, we move our feet." And the first time I got to experience that was with Matt Britt, our youth director, and that really moved him as it did me. But so we had a song called "More Love." There is more love somewhere. I'm going to keep on till I find it. There's more love somewhere. And we brought the street preacher in, and all of us gathered around at that monument park, and we sang "There's More Love Somewhere." And those are the kinds of things that you can go see a site and you can go visit a museum, but when you do something like that with a community of faith and a choir, you can like live into it in a way that's unique. And we've done that a number of times. One time we went to Atlanta and sang "What a Wonderful World" at Ebenezer Baptist Church, Martin Luther King's church.
Yeah.
This past choir tour, we sang a concert in that great cathedral that's right there in the French Quarter. Everybody takes pictures of it. We got to sing a concert inside that cathedral, and it was, it's about 3 times the size of our sanctuary. Right. And our youth were just standing there and singing in front of tourists and everybody, and just fierce. And choir tour is really one of those galvanizing experiences. We sing throughout the year. We have practices, but the tour is where we really become a family. And so I've been on I think 20 of them, and hope to make it on 20 more, although sleeping on the gym floor 5 nights in a row is probably not my favorite. But,
and that's what y'all did this year? You slept on the gym floors?
Oh yeah.
Good for you.
But
Look at you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we've got some pictures of that cathedral and the youth. You can actually see how tall it is and how
it's
just,
immense.
you get the whole group, and looks like y'all had lots of fun in New Orleans with the beignets, you and Thomas, and a bunch of everybody just having their beignets.
Yes, and everybody kind of going into their, haggling about where they're going to eat and what they're going to see. In fact, there was an episode of Ted Lasso that was just on last night. It's the episode where they're in Amsterdam and they're all trying to figure out what they're going to go do. And it was the same thing for us. Like, what's everybody going to go do? Are we going to go see the French Quarter? Are we going to go hear some jazz? Are we going to go eat a gumbo? And it was a blast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, choir tour sounds like it always is a blast, even with the gym floors.
Yep.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, so I know lots of folks know you as the children's minister, as Mr. Mark. For how long have you held that position here?
Sure. So I started as the children's minister in February of 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think that those who know you as Mr. Mark since 2011, maybe you have kids, young kids, they know you as Mr. Mark. But I know from people in my household, as well as some of our friends that I'll run into in the hallways, I think it was after Storms, your musical, was that last year?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with a couple of former youth choir members, and they were, who have kids now,
Sure.
that were in the musical, and they said, Mr. Mark, he's not as intense as he used to be. Can you talk about that and how you, that transition, whether it's a transition or not, maybe you're still very intense with the new youth choir, but I know you've always expected a lot,
Sure.
Musical excellence wise, but as well, you've been able to balance musical excellence with building kids' confidence up. Can you talk about how you balance that?
So, I mean, let's just be honest. For the first, I would say probably half of my time here, I don't think I balanced it very well at all. I think I was really focused on musical excellence. It's interesting. When I first started here, I was young and ambitious, and during my time here, I also went and got a master's degree in choral and orchestral conducting, and so I really wanted the choir to sound good, because it was not just because I did want them to sound good for their own sake, but I also felt it was a reflection on me and how good a musician I was, and so if they sang well, oh, what a great director Mark is! Aren't we lucky to have him? And right, and if the choir didn't do so well, then that was also a reflection on me, and they weren't well prepared, and that's because of me. And I really did a lot about making it about me, to be quite honest. They did get good, very good, but they're, I think all of us know how to say things like, being in music ministry, it's about people. We all know how to say that, but what are our behaviors? And I think my behaviors, if you really went back, it's like, man, he really cares about that G major chord. That's what matters to him. And I could say people, or here's another one. I went in going to teach my students, but it turns out they taught me. And we all know how to say that, right? But there's saying it and there's living into it. And so if I had that to go and do over again, I would do it differently. I wasn't a music minister. I was a music director. I believed in music having the power to inspire and to touch lives. And I was really concerned about doing that for the congregation. I was concerned about ministering to the congregation through the music. But I wasn't doing a great job of ministering to the singers in front of me on a Wednesday night or on a Sunday evening. And those early rehearsals, those first several years with the youth choir, we actually rehearsed after youth programming on Sunday evening. It was 7 to 8:30 on Sunday nights.
Holy
Can you believe
cow.
that?
Yeah, you think that would fly today with
Different
parents?
time, different time. So anyway, continuing on with your question. So I was really I was getting burnout, and I think the singers I was working with, this is kind of in like 2007, 2008, right around that time, were kind of getting a little crispy too. We're pushing. We were doing a lot of hard musical things that I had always wanted to do because I wanted to do these hard musical pieces without really considering, is this the best fit for us right now?
Right.
And there's a lot of argument to be made of how people appreciate having high expectations, and and not wanting to set the bar too low because that can be insulting. And there's something great about rallying around a common cause that's hard and doing hard things. And I believe all that, but there's a way to go about doing it the right way. And I feel certain that I did not always do it the right way. To put it a different
You're not
way,
perfect?
Yeah. This just in everybody. Super flawed human right here. Yeah, so I was getting real crispy, and so I was looking at, well, what's next? And this is around 08, 09 in particular. And so I was having a really good conversation with a friend of mine. I didn't think it was good at the time. And I was doing the children's message by now. I wasn't doing but I did the children's message in the 11 o'clock for almost 3 years before I was the children's minister. So I'd be up in the choir. I'd be conducting the Lacrimosa from the Mozart Requiem. Then I'd turn right around. Hey, kids, come on down. And so someone in the choir, we went out to breakfast, and I thought it was going to be this great gripe session where I could talk about, man, so-and-so this and so-and-so that. And he said, it's not as fun with you as it used to be. And ouch, was not, that's not what I was hoping to hear. I was hoping for a fellow conspirator, and we can just talk together about, how if only so-and-so. And he did what a real friend did. He was honest. And then he went on to say, we get to see you do all of it, from the choir to working with the kids. And you don't look at us the way you look at the kids.
Wow.
And so I took that and held on to it for a while, resented him for a while, because I'm,
Sure.
just like, who's the, and he was right. And I let it work on me, and continued to let it work on me, and thought, well, maybe what I'm supposed to do is go do more schooling. Spend so much time in education being a teacher. Often the solution is more school. So maybe I'll pursue a doctorate in music education. And so I'm sorry, this is going to be a real rabbit trail.
No, please.
So this will all be cut out later. But
that's what Church Chats is all about, rabbit trails.
So I was applying to do doctoral work in music education at a local university. And so one of the things I had to do was take, I think it was called the GRE. And so you have to reserve that, in advance, pay your money up front. And then there was a call from a family here that they wanted me to sing a couple of songs, that a family member who had died and wanted me to sing, and wanted me to sing a couple of songs that were special to their family and had meaning. And I'm like, sure. And when's the funeral? And it was the same day as the GRE. Maybe the GRE started at like 11, the funeral was at 1. The GRE is a 4-hour exam. And so I called the GRE, and I'm like, hey, can you, like, of course not, we cannot reschedule this. And I'm like, so I went, and they wouldn't even let me take my watch in there, because I think they thought I was going to, cheat on the answers or whatever. So I took the GRE in like an hour.
Ran through it as quickly as you could.
Went and then sang, and I'm like, man, if this is what this is going to be, I don't want any part of this. I'm supposed to be serving these families. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I also feel crispy. So I went and talked to my buddy, Cynthia, who was a very good friend of mine on staff. Cynthia Fisher, former Cynthia McElrath. Cece was the children's minister here for 25 years before I did it. And so I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, have you ever thought about children's ministry? And I said, no. I know I don't want to do that. Let's keep talking. And she goes, well, let's, So we're getting really into it now. So I went home and told Nina. I said, you know what Cynthia said? She said, you should do children's ministry. And I'm like, and she said, well, what do you think about that? I'm like, no, of course not. Of course I don't want to do that. That's ridiculous. That's just, no. So the next day, I went and hung out with Cynthia again. So tell me about what you do. She goes, are you interested? I said, no. But what do you do that's like we see what the classes are like. I know what Vacation Bible School looks like from the front. Tell me about the stuff that we don't see, right? What happens in the kitchen? And so she told me a little bit about it, and I said, okay, all right. She goes, you interested? I said, nope. But just like my conversation with that friend at breakfast, I chewed on it. I'm a classic all-time muller. I will mull, and so I thought about it. Well, it was getting close to Lent 2010, and there was a labyrinth set up in Wesley Hall. Our friend, the now having left us, Linda Loney, was a big champion of the labyrinth. And I was a labyrinth denier. I was always what is this new age hooby-gooby? Oh, sure, there's a labyrinth, and of course there's a candle there, blah, blah, blah. And so I would mock it, and I would see how fast I could run the labyrinth. And so just...
That's not what you're supposed to do in a labyrinth.
It's not. But so I'm like, all right, Mark, you've actually got something you're mulling. Why don't you take the labyrinth seriously for once? So I took off my shoes. There was no one in there. The labyrinth had been set up. It was there all day. And I'm processing this question. Like, God, do you want me to be a children's minister? I don't know. But I was willing to just kind of hold that and walk the labyrinth slowly, which is what you're supposed to do, is kind of let go. I always tell the kids that labyrinth is not a maze. You're not, you don't walk it to get lost, or you're not trying to find your way. You're trying to lose yourself to find the way. And so I'm walking it. And what am I supposed to do? And so in the center of the labyrinth were all of these stones. And we'd learn later had affirmations like joy and peace and breathe. And I'm sitting there, I'm squatting down in the middle of the labyrinth, and I'm like, do you want me to be a children's minister? And I turn one over and it says yes. And so I know that God is not a magic 8-ball and you just ask it a question. Am I supposed outlook cloudy, try again later? Like, I know, but
well, God was in that situation, it seems.
Oh my goodness. but I'm hard-headed, right? And if it had been joy or peace, my brain would have engineered that to mean what I wanted it to mean. And it was a 2x4 the head. Burrows, how much clearer do I have to make this?
Wow.
And so I just bawled I was so glad I was alone in the room at the time. And next day, told Cynthia about it, and I told Nina about it, and she goes, are you sure? I'm like, I guess. So
the magic 8-ball told me yes.
I did. So I went and told Cynthia, we talked, and we said, well, let's bring in Mike, who was our direct report at the time. And the three of us visited about it, and we said, yeah, that's a good idea. And so the three of us then went in and sat in Dr. Brewster's office and said, hey, Dr. B, we got an idea. And Dr. B's like, this is a good idea. Like, it just,
everybody's in agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they took it to Children's Council, and they're like, this is a good idea. And it's like, I guess maybe I was the last one to the party. And another departed part of our family, Richard LeBoon, he came up one time, he said, Mark, I thought you were crazy when you left music, and I've seen you with the kids. And he's like, that was a good choice. And so I guess anyway, tell your friends the truth and listen to God when God says stuff. So
well, that's an incredible calling story. We've had calling stories we've talked about with lots of our church chat folks, and gosh, that's a great one. Let's take a quick break. We're going to be back with Mark Burrows here in just a minute. We'll see you in a minute.